If you're looking to shoot a great vlog, the Canon G7X Mark II is the camera for you. Affiliate link below. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and I just got home from seeing Spider-Man Homecoming, a movie that I have been waiting for since it was first discussed at the tail end of 2014 with the Sony Hack that Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal had discussed the idea of bringing Spider-Man to the MCU. Nearly 3 years, 2.5 years later, really, it came true. 2.5 years later, it came true. I just got home from watching it. It literally exists. Spider-Man is now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, yeah, he's been there for a year, but this was his first full outing. This was his first feature, and it was fantastic. Utterly, utterly fantastic. Found myself enjoying the scenes of just Peter Parker more than the scenes of Spider-Man. But I'm going to get to that. So there will be lots of spoilers in this review. If you want to know whether or not I believe you should rush to the theater right away to go see Spider-Man Homecoming, the answer is, oh, what are you doing? Why are you in here? Why are you getting? Go! Get to the theater. Go see the movie. Do it. Do it now, goddammit. And then come back. And then watch the rest of this fucking review. So the spoilers from here on out. You've been warned. The spoilers. They are beginning. Now, this movie takes place a little bit in a different time zone. Or at a different point in time. Because it starts with the Battle of New York. And Toomes, aka Vulture, and his cleaning crew are cleaning up the destruction of the city after Chitauri invasion. They get shut down by basically Tony Stark and I'm assuming S.H.I.E.L.D. And then 8 years later, this is when the story picks up. Well, it was 2012 in that, and then 8 years later would be 2020. Now, maybe they're tying that in with the fact that Avengers Age of Ultron or Avengers Infinity War takes place in 2018 and 2019 respectively. Yeah, there was a weird bit of time jump there. 8 years is a long time. 5 years would have been utterly acceptable. 8 years screws the entire timeline up. Now, granted, there have been some articles that have come out in the I guess you could say the promotion for the film that have talked about the timeline and where this film fits in the timeline, because it takes place roughly 2 to 3 months after the events of of Civil War. So that was clearly in 2016. This would have been in 2016, but somehow it's set in 2020 or Avengers was supposed to take place in 2010, not long after the events of Iron Man 2. We never established a timeline. I'm sure now they have one, like I said, but going off that was a little bit odd. That was one of the only complaints I had with the movie, was the timeline felt weird. But, Peter Parker living with smoking hot Aunt May, right? Got his best friend Ned doing his thing where he's going to school and being Spider-Man at night, trying to win the approval of Tony Stark by going through Happy Hogan, wonderfully played once again by Jon Favreau and given a much larger role than he was 4 years ago in Iron Man 3, which was the last time we saw him. Jon Favreau needs to be in every goddamn Marvel movie. I think we all can agree at this point. And there's even a couple nods to, him having directed Iron Man. Like there's a few things around that were pretty good. But he's trying to do all this. He's in the debate team. There's a girl named Liz, a senior that he likes, the one we see from the trailer. Him and his friend are always discussing her. But then, of course, Ned finds out that he's Spider-Man, and then it basically becomes his sidekick, his rock, if you will, and the person that is ultimately his biggest cheerleader. And at the same time, the Vulture, of which they never named as the Vulture, which I thought was pretty interesting, has been working gigs at stealing the Chitauri weaponry over the course of the past 8 years in order to send his daughter to a nice school. That we later learned is actually Liz, in one of I felt a really big and well done twist for the story. I thought I didn't see that coming, to be honest with you. I really honestly didn't. And when it happened, the whole audience was like, oh shit. And it added this whole new sense of weight to what was happening in the movie. That was the thing I liked about this movie, is it was it was well put together in terms of the story, the structure, and the weight that was on Peter Parker's shoulders and everything else. You felt like you were in a 1980s John Hughes romantic comedy. It was a teen comedy starring Peter Parker, featuring Iron Man and Spider-Man. In fact, the Spider-Man scenes, as I said, were great, but the scenes with Peter, of Tom Holland as Peter, I thought were fantastic. And I think that had a lot to do with the writers. One of them was the guy who was in Freaks and Geeks, and he also co-wrote and co-directed Vacation from like 2 years ago, John Francis Daly. And he, I think, brought a lot of that to the script, to the story, ultimately really knocking it out of the park. Like I said, Michael Keaton was fantastic as Toomes, as Vulture, a very menacing, low-level, kind of street-level villain. Bokeem Woodbine as Shocker, and us getting kind of like the origin of Shocker and everything else. And then also a couple other hints at, the Sinister Six, essentially. We don't know anyone specifically, but we know that there are more people out there that are looking to fight. And there was even a very obscure Defenders reference. It's when Peter was talking to Tony Stark and mentioned, like fighting these guys, and Tony's like, well, we have guys that take care of that. Well, street level guys. And the street level Defenders are the Defenders, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist. So it was an obscure and probably not canonical connection to the two, but I caught it. Oh, I caught it. Never mind the fact that we have just a little over a month until Defenders hits, so hype is high. The action scenes were pretty fantastic. The ferry scene was great. Spider-Man just being Spider-Man in the city was wonderful. The way that they shot the scenes were great. He very much was a street level hero that was, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, just doing little things for that. And, like some old lady bought him a churro. And then he's like, oh, I probably shouldn't have told him that they bought the churro, because he's so happy to be doing what he's doing. He so loves what he's doing. And then he's in school and he's trying to make his web juice. And he's trying to, also make it all work. While still trying to be a teenager at times. But at this point, you could tell that Parker has checked out of being a teenager. He's checked out. He's 15. He wants to be an Avenger. He's trying to be an Avenger. And Tony is very much trying to mentor him in a way, using absentee father, tough love style, which does work, I think, as a character development for him. He wants to impress Tony. He wants to, and Tony, you can tell, sees a lot of himself in Peter, that eagerness to please, that eagerness to get out there and to fight crime and to save the world, essentially. And he sees a lot of himself in Peter, and also wants to be the better mentor and even be a better father figure. So that dynamic played in quite a bit. Although Robert Downey Jr. did a great job as usual as Tony Stark, it didn't necessarily feel the most heartfelt that it could have been. But that might have also been the fact that Tony were trying to remain emotionally distant and not give it his all and not dive in, which is what Peter wanted. And he wanted to build their trust, to build to that point. And Peter kept kind of screwing up, trying to essentially save the day, even though Tony Stark was essentially kind of congratulating him. And the scene I really liked, though, is he ends up getting knocked into this lake, and then one of the Iron Man suits goes and rescues him, and it's not Tony Stark isn't in it, and it's just Robert Downey Jr. remote controlling it while he's in India, right? And then at the ferry scene, Iron Man shows up, and you think that this is another automated controlled bot, and then Peter Parker's like, well, if you cared, you'd be here. And then bam, open the suits, and here comes fucking Robert Downey Jr. And you're like, oh, he does care, and Peter was kind of taken aback by that, not expecting him to actually be there. So the father-son, mentor-mentee dynamic was really well done, really well handled, and I enjoyed the character interactions with everybody quite a bit. In fact, that's why I said it reminds me of a John Hughes movie, because those character interactions were memorable, and those character interactions were stuff you really wanted to enjoy, you wanted to see more of. And this movie has that in absolute spades. You can sense the friendship between Ned and between Peter. They have their secret handshake that they do a couple times in the movie, and they do it flawlessly. They really play off each other's energy, and they both bring it. Flash Thompson is now more of a geek than he is a jock, but I thought it worked well for the character. And I like that he was very mean to Peter, but Peter kind of got the ultimate revenge in the end, so to speak. And everything about it was just a well done, kind of ground level Marvel Cinematic Universe film, and one that you don't get to see a lot of. I mean, Ant-Man kind of comes into play because that's more of a heist comedy. This one's more of a coming of age comedy featuring a superhero. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about the journey to become one and the pitfalls and the trials and tribulations one will go through in order to get there. And that was one of the things I really loved about it. One of the things I really enjoyed about it. Again, interesting on the downside though, because there are a couple things that did bother me. One was the fact that there was a lot of shots in the trailer that didn't make it into the movie. Like the shot with Spider-Man swinging and Iron Man flying away. Like that was cut. We thought that was going to be the last shot of the movie. They chose a different one that I thought actually worked out really well given the tone. A couple other scenes, like him watching the fight on YouTube of him versus Giant Man, that is kind of mentioned earlier in the movie, but not in that same context. And a couple other shots here and there that felt very much similar to like how Disney handled the Rogue One trailers, where like most of that footage wasn't even in the movie, and so just kind of setting the theme, and that's an interesting tactic for setting the expectation, but then delivering something totally different, which can screw some people up in terms of enjoyment because they were expecting these scenes, but otherwise it worked out well because stuff is coming, but it leaves you wanting more because the stuff you were expecting to see wasn't there. And so it actually kind of forces you to go back and watch it again to maybe see the things you missed because you were watching, you were waiting for those scenes from the trailer. So there's that. But ultimately, I really liked everything about it. Again, the only other thing I didn't care for was Zendaya, because the whole time she's not MJ, she's not MJ, she's not MJ. End of the movie, she's like, "Oh, my name is Michelle, but everyone calls me MJ." And then she kind of like looks at Peter with this kind of crush on her face and shit, and it's like, really? Now I know you're not MJ Watson. You're not Mary Jane Watson. Maybe Mary Jane will come as Mary Jane, and she won't be going as MJ, right? Maybe MJ is just a nickname that she gets down the road. Clearly, Zendaya is not Mary Jane Watson. She's Michelle something or another. So that's just what people call her. But it was one of those nods where you're like, I don't know. That was kind of lame. That was really the only sour note on the entire film was that, because it was kind of groan-worthy. People in the audience weren't laughing or cheering. They were groaning. Which might have played into the overall aspect of it being like this teen comedy thing. Again, expectations were kind of scuttled with how they promoted the film. Then you get into the end credit stuff, and the end credit stuff, I guess talks more about the Sinister Six, with like the guy with the scorpion tattoo, and friends on the outside that want to kill Spider-Man, but then Toombs also keeping his secret. And then the last one was Captain America doing a little PSA at the end about patience and there being a long wait for something ultimately disappointing, which was very funny, given the other times that Captain America had made an appearance in the movie on PSAs. And one of my favorite ones, though, too, was Hannibal Buress is like, yeah, I got to show you this guy's, it's state mandated, but I'm pretty sure he's now a war criminal. And there's like, so there's a joke about that, but then it's also like no one talked about it at all. So it was a fun little throwaway line of dialogue, and Hannibal Buress for like the 3 scenes he was in was good. Again, I really loved what they did with this. This is the best thing that could have happened to Sony, because there's no way Sony could have made this movie on their own. There's no way Sony could have put together this film in the way that worked to the larger cinematic universe or worked at this level. They tried a little bit with the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. They tried a little bit to create this type of atmosphere, but it was the guys who brought to it with like an indie film perspective, a high school comedy perspective, and they brought the good characters that allowed everything else to shine. Mark Webb's directing on Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 were good for the interpersonal scenes, but the action stuff wasn't very good. Whereas here you had the interpersonal scenes were fantastic, and the action was fantastic, and the story was fantastic, and finally Marvel has a good villain that is still alive and will clearly come up again down the road. And so right out the gate, we've got a good bad guy. There was no reference to the Osborns. There was no reference to Uncle Ben. There was no reference to how Peter got bit, just that it happened. And they kept it very kind of surface level in order for the world to unravel around the characters and not to drive us back into nostalgia. This movie, if Ghostbusters last year would have been anywhere near as aware of what it is doing that this movie is, we would have had a better movie last year with Ghostbusters guaranteed. This is one that I love, one that I can't wait to go see again, and one that I hope you guys go check out, because it's looking to make about $100 million this opening weekend, and it's well deserved. Marvel knocked it out of the park, and Sony is lucky to make the deal that they did. I just hope that the 5-film arc we get for Spider-Man, which is going to be Homecoming, Avengers 3, Avengers 4, and then the next 2 Spider-Man sequels afterward, give us a fantastic character development, character arc that we get to see actual MJ or Gwen Stacy or J. Jonah Jameson or the Daily Bugle or God, help us, Doc Ock, fucking Rhino, Kraven the Hunter, which I've heard a rumor of Kraven the Hunter. And who knows how this is going to tie in to the Venom movie or the Silver Sable Black Cat film. I have no idea, but we're going to find out. Anyway, what do you guys think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been Throwback Theater. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a fantastic day. Peace out.